Right now, Ukraine is taking the war to Russia. Just in the first 2 weeks of August, Ukraine has knocked out hundreds of thousands of barrels per day of Russia's oil refining capacity. In fact, some estimates now place the figure at nearly 1/5 of the entire national total. This is crippling the Kremlin's ability to finance this war. Ukraine's strategy is quite straightforward. Force Russia to its knees. Make the cost of invasion impossible to sustain. And now Vladimir Putin is in an untenable situation. He can either end the invasion or continue and be absolutely sure that soon he will see the total collapse of the Russian economy. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kyiv Post here in Kyiv, Ukraine. And what Ukraine is doing is phenomenal because these deep strikes are costing Russia billions. Since January, Ukraine has destroyed assets worth more than 4% of Russia's GDP. And something that's sort of amazing, truly unprecedented operational reach, is that around 10% of these strikes hit targets more than 1,000 kilometers, 620 miles, from the Ukrainian border. And these Ukrainian drones are hitting very important targets. Just look at the attack last night. It hit the Rosneft Syzran oil refinery. Now that refinery is offline, that was the facility that was producing around 165,000 barrels per day. It was one of the key facilities, in fact, in all of the Volga region and was supplying the airfields, the military units, multiple Russian regions. But now it's been shut down. And this will cause fuel shortages. This will increase transportation cost. This will raise the cost on everything. And right now, we see that the Russians don't have any good solutions. Because, as an example, that specific facility, it had been struck twice before by Ukrainian drones. Now, this latest strike seems to have put that facility offline for a long time to come, but shows you that the Russians should have expected this, but they don't have the capacity to stop Ukraine's attacks. Just between August 2nd to August 15th, the strikes have done massive damage to Russia. In Ryazan, more than half of the refining capacity was disabled due to Ukrainian drone strikes. In Novokobishevsk, the primary processing unit, it was also stopped there due to the fires from Ukrainian drones. In Afepsky, we see that the fire damage there, it reduced the refining capacity 40 to 50%. In the case of Saratov, we saw a significant drop in output as well. In Volgograd, the fires there also reduced the capacity for refining by about 1/3. In the case of Syzran, we saw also a major drop there due to the fact that they were just struck by drones. So if we combine these all together and we say, well, how much is this really for Russia? Will they really feel this? Well, it works out to be about 19% of Russia's total refining capacity. And it was all disabled in less than 2 weeks. So I have a question for you. How often have you seen this in the Western press? Oil and gas are about 40 to 50% of Russia's national budget. And in less than 2 weeks, Russia has lost its ability to get oil and gas. To refine oil is key for Russia. To not have that means they're going to be cut off from foreign currency, hard currency, which the Russian economy needs. It's simply not possible for Russia to continue waging war if Ukraine keeps taking the war to Russia, which is why this channel exists. To get the truth of what is happening here in Ukraine and what is really happening inside of Russia to the international community. Because right now, we are in a critical moment. As you know, negotiations have begun and Ukraine's future is likely being decided. Please help me to support Ukraine. Just do one small thing. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and consider becoming a channel member today. And thank you, all 193,000 of you who have chosen to become subscribers in the past 3 months. I really hope that we can break 200,000 subscribers before reaching the 3-month mark. I appreciate it. Please subscribe. So let's go through these different attacks and see what this really will mean for Russia. So in the case of the Ryazan and Novokobishevsk attacks, well, together that reduced just about 5% of Russia's average 2024 refining runs. And it's having an immediate effect within Russia. Gasoline prices now have reached a record high in Russia. And it's gotten so high, the Kremlin has imposed a full gasoline export ban from August 5th until August 31st. Yet that's not going to save them because the shortages are still there. There's low reserves. There's simply not an ability to get more. So we can expect that export ban, it's going to continue, which once again will cut into Russia's ability to finance this war. Now, we've seen that the total in July of refined products being exported was reduced by about 6.7%. That's a pretty substantial jump. And the monthly damage, if the Ukrainians were to continue this, let's say, well, if the Ukrainians were to continue like this, we can expect to see in the very near term, gasoline supply will be cut by another 9%. Diesel supply will be cut by another 13%. Taxes lost due to this work out to about $93 million per month. Corporate gross margin losses, they range to about $75 million per month. But if this continues just a bit longer, we will see Russia facing a strategic choice. Fuel its cities or fuel its army. And they don't have a lot of options when it comes to where they'll get money from. Just recently, Russia has had more and more economic problems. In fact, the liquidity problems within their banks are grave. Even think tanks associated with the Kremlin are saying that there could be a cascading failure within the banking sector due to the lack of liquidity. And that's why we see today that banks are rejecting 80% of loans. And even though the government tries to subsidize things like mortgages, more and more people are being told no because the bank doesn't have enough cash to even give loans. And that makes a lot of sense because we see that the defaults are rising week after week, month after month. And that's despite the fact the central bank has lowered the key interest rate from 21% to 18%. Now, just to make this more easy to understand or better illustrated, the IMF has projected the GDP per capita in 2025 in Russia works out to be about 14,260. That's less than Kazakhstan, which has 14,770. And what's amazing here is not just simply that it's less than Kazakhstan, it's that this is based on numbers that Russia supplied to the IMF itself. It puts unusually rosy numbers into its analysis when it gives it to the IMF or other international entities. But even in this, they couldn't hide how bad it was. But it's not just limited to this. Ukraine has another part of the strategy, and that is to force the Russians to spread out their air defense, to make it impossible for the Russians to protect both their military front lines and to also protect their VIPs back in Moscow and also to protect their oil refineries. They can't protect it all, and Ukraine is going for all of them. So just look at the attack they carried out on the Olia seaport. That's located in the Astrakhan region of Russia. The attack there was extremely important because it hit the vessel coming from Iran that had Shahed drone components as well as the munitions. And why that's so important is that this is breaking the critical link for Russia to get the supplies it needs. Without the supplies from Iran, organically at home, the Russians cannot produce the munitions that they need, nor can they produce the drones that they're using. And so we can expect this is going to get worse for Russia, not better, because every single day, Ukraine is carrying out more attacks like this. In fact, just the drone attacks yesterday, we saw that there was a massive drone attack in the occupied city of Kyiv. So that city was attacked by more than 100 Ukrainian drones. Waves of them were flying in. And what was hit? The headquarters of the 132nd Separate Guards Motor Brigade. This is an incredibly important unit because that unit is key for making sure that Donetsk remains under occupation. But we see that Ukraine's going for the control and the command centers across the occupied territories and even inside of Russia. It was just yesterday that Ukraine sought to carry out a massive attack on the Rostov Southern Military Command Unit. That's the one that's located in Russia. Now, the Southern Military Command is where the entire war in Ukraine is planned, from the missile strikes to where they decide that soldiers will try to make a break through the front. It is all happening at the Rostov facility. But incredibly enough, Ukraine now is targeting it. But Ukraine is doing all of this with the strategy, as I said, to spread out the Russian air defense. So the air defense is less effective. Just last night, there was an attack in the city of Blitz.
Кто-нибудь подскажет, что это?
Now, Belutsk is located in Kaliningrad, which is in the European part of Russia, northwestern part, that's separated. It's an exclave from Russia. But there was reports, and there's plenty of videos now of the anti-air fire as well as the alarms going off there. Now, of course, locals there claim that this was just a missile strike exercise. But the locals understand there was probably a real drone strike going on there. And why that matters? How can Russia get more air defense to them? It can't. So Russians are becoming increasingly concerned. They don't know what to do. And that's why when you see the story that came out yesterday, that a Su-30SM, that it crashed somewhere near Zmini Island, Snake Island, Ukrainian naval intelligence says that they got the communications and they know this thing crashed in southeast of Zmini Island. Now, it's not clear exactly what happened there, but knowing Russia's own tendency, it could very well have been their own air defense, their own desire to protect themselves. They end up shooting down one of their own airplanes. All of this is putting Vladimir Putin into more and more of a difficult situation. There's been rumors recently, picking up more and more by the day, that Putin's inner circle wants to see an end to this war. Now, of course, they can't admit that publicly. Publicly, they have to show that they're patriots and they fully support Putin. But in fact, the reason that Vladimir Putin is the dictator, the bargain he had with his society, was that he would assure stability. He would not allow Russia to become a lawless nation or allow Russia to be a nation that can become dangerous. But now it's very dangerous. And even the elites, the oligarchs, are losing money. And that puts Vladimir Putin in a very bad situation, which is why some people within Russia and on Telegram are saying that Vladimir Putin in Alaska will try to show that he's trying to make an end to this war, or trying to find some sort of resolution, if for nothing else, to calm the elites in Russia, to quell their anger. And in fact, it's sort of shocking, but news coming out of Russia now says that there are more and more likelihood that the Russians will try to do something to end this war, to agree to something in Alaska, because Vladimir Putin wants to show his people back home that he's doing his part to make sure that there's no more explosions throughout Russia. So as we watch this and we see what's happening next, we can be sure that Vladimir Putin's going to try to flex muscle. We can be sure that he's going to make more statements like the one he made today, thanking the North Koreans for their support in fighting the neo-Nazis within Ukraine. It's sort of funny, but Russia, considered itself to be a great superpower, is now so reliant on countries like North Korea, which it hopes will send 6,000 more troops to Russia. But going ahead, what we can expect is this. For the Russians, the situation is bad, and it's getting worse. Vladimir Putin is being greeted when he arrives to Alaska by hundreds of pro-Ukrainian demonstrators. People there are very supportive of Ukraine, as people in the United States as a whole are. In fact, new polling has come out where more Republicans than ever before support further assistance for Ukraine. Right now, the Russians are seeing that their great hopes that the American people and the Europeans would abandon Ukraine is not coming to fruition. And the Russians have been complaining a lot. In fact, the Russian media has been complaining that on their flight to the United States, they were served chicken Kyiv, which they didn't think was very funny. They've also been sleeping on cots inside of a stadium in Alaska. That's all that they get. So when we see this lack of support for the Russians, they're surprised. They really didn't expect this. They really thought that somehow the world would turn on Ukraine and come to rally behind Russia. It's not only absurd, it's totally false. But now they're dealing with another problem. And this one hurts them a lot. It really frustrates them that Russia, this great superpower, is being dismantled. Ukraine is draining the Russian economy. It's dividing its elites. It's causing the Russian war machine to seize up. And that's exactly how you end a war. By breaking your enemy's ability to fight, your enemy's ability to pay, and challenging your enemy's ability to continue ruling his country. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.